Everyone say deliberate planning. Say that again. Find that a lot of ministries or even businesses, especially on our continent, what we tend to do is we don't spend enough time with deliberate planning. But once the plan is done, then the superstructure has to go up. And you have to spend a lot of time in the foundation. A lot of time in the foundation. This building is sitting on several pillars. You don't really see them. This is not the building. All of this is not the building. But you have a lot of ministries and businesses in Africa. You know, it's the BMW, the car, the flash, the bling, the ring, you know, the look good. And what you have is you have this premature finish without time in the foundation and the superstructure and the pillars. It takes a long time to get the pillars in the ground. It takes a long time to get the pillars in the ground. It takes a long time. What's your church going to be 20 years from now? 20 years from now. What's your life going to be? Your ministry, your children, 20 years from now. Who do you want to get old with? Who do you want to be in the future? Those questions you have to answer. Especially many of you here that are in your mid-40s going to 50. I can give you a list of 50 things that don't work at the age of 50, the way they used to work. And so the point is here is that you've got to spend a lot of time, especially when you're building ministry, on the foundation. I don't bother too much with, grass-eating prophets who are drawing crowds and prophets who have talking snakes. And I don't have time for that. What we want to spend time with, and I'm not into miracle money. If there's miracle money, fine, that's great. But I haven't seen miracle money buy someone a house, teach them how to maintain a house, how to look after a television, how to look after a license, how to pay their subscriptions, how to invest in children's university. There's not enough miracle money to go around for that. The miracle is how you take the money that you have and how you discipline with it and manage it. We're going to talk about some of that. And so it's important that we build systematically. Amen. So I would encourage every leader, you must, by the month of October, already have your rollout. Already have your rollout for 2015. Dr. Osman and I were just chatting a few minutes ago, and we were already talking about the summit, CAA summit coming to Harare. The 2nd, 3rd, 4th, I think it's 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and 4th of February is coming here. And we already have our theme for the summit for next year, and putting together the materials for the Council of African Apostles. And we have a target audience, but we also have a 10-year plan for the fruit from that target audience. We're thinking about that. We're putting in the details, because there are many young guys here that we know 10 years from now will be taking over from us. And let me just say this on a subjective prophetic note, because this lesson tends to be very objective, but on a subjective apostolic prophetic note, the year 2020 is right here. And I'm telling you, in the year 2020, there's going to be such a dramatic, major, catastrophic, cataclysmic shift in Africa. Mantles are going to be jumping on young guys that are here. That's set. It's set. But it's going to be even worse of a catastrophe if you haven't done the groundwork. If you haven't done the groundwork. So we're going to encourage that. We're going to be releasing, watch our website, we're going to be releasing a 20-year plan, which is a template for those of New Life Covenant Church. That's coming out towards the latter part of this year, around about October-ish, because I start in October the Wisdom series for our church. I begin the Wisdom series. We're going to roll out that 20-year plan template, and any other pastor here that needs that, we'll make that available to you, but not before October. Go to the next one, please, real quick. That's basically our theme. Our theme is there already for 2015. Our theme for next year, which includes the Council of African Apostles, the theme is one word: building. This year we're organizing people, organizing money. And there's many initiatives that we've had, but our theme next year is one word: building. And we're not referring to building our church. The building is more than that. It's now putting in the hands of people building blocks. Because we've been goofing around with Lego and showing you how you can build it, but now we're going to put the tools, very tangible physical tools, on how to build. And part of that building process is a location document to locate where you are, because the guy that's just making $10 profit a month is not on the same level as a guy that's making 100,000 or $1 million. And so, but every person needs to be located, and we want to be able to transpose the principles of building blocks. So that's the whole lot. So you need pastors and leaders, business people. Think minimum 10 years. Think 20 years. Stretch yourself. Tell somebody, think long term. Think long term. Think long term. So you don't want to eat, as a young man, you don't want to eat irresponsibly now and go into your 40s with a big stomach that you have to reel in and breathe heavily and eat late and all that. Get rid of it. Start now. Get in shape now. All right. I'm trying to be inspiring. Let's go. Everyone say momentum. The definition of momentum is the quality of motion of a moving body, the impetus gained by a moving object, the force of something when it's moving, the force or strength that allows something to continue to grow stronger and to move further or faster. We did that yesterday, some definitions. And then we mentioned very quickly triggers or some momentum strategies, triggers, how to gather momentum. And we did mention that there are 4 classes of people that come to our ministries. The wrong people doing the wrong things. The right people doing the wrong things. The wrong people doing the right things, but we want to go to the right people doing the right things. And we have to spend time developing individuals. We talked about how you develop the individual on individual level, then the house level, then the regional level, towards the global level. We mentioned a lot of that. And so please get the resource yesterday, but we want to move on to momentum. Okay, we talked for a few minutes on what gathers momentum. New things gathers momentum. New leadership, new direction, new services, new ministry, new ideas. Just shake a few things around, turn some things around. Bringing in new people, consulting with new things for your ministry, that helps momentum. Improvement triggers momentum. And that means that we are significantly now taking notes of where we are and to how we can improve. So for example, for conference already, this one, there's already a whole list of things that we want to change for next year and add to, because we want to keep it fresh. And so you have to ask yourself, if you're willing to and able to do something radically different. And it really does help because it adds momentum. And then consistency improves and triggers momentum. Just stay with it. Stay with it. Stay with it. Make sure that your church is open every 10 o'clock if you say it's 10 o'clock. Whoever's there. Never condition your church to the temperament of the culture of the people. Because if you do that, you'll never start church on time. Because the 13th commandment is, blessed are the late, for they shall be rewarded. Don't reward late people. Because if you reward them, firstly, it's a sign of dishonor. But if you reward late people, you're actually prolonging your death. Because they'll only be late for you. They won't be late for their doctor, their lawyer, and they definitely won't be late for South African Airways. So never condition, never All right. Let me just breeze back to consistency improves triggers, improves and triggers momentum. I use the Asian Indians as an example. When we first started attending our church in Harare called New Life Temple back then, there was a family that started attending the church. They were the Fernandez family. And I think their business is still on Robert Mugabe and Julius. All they did, all the Fernandez family did as a business, buttons and cotton. Buttons and cotton. Buttons, any kind of... Michael Jackson would have loved that store. There were so many buttons there. Like buttons and cotton. They didn't do everything else. There's another store around the corner called Ratanji. All they did was soles, shoes, shoes, repairing shoes, shoes, shoes. And one of the little captions was saving souls. Saving souls. Khatri Brothers, still there, South Avenue. All they do is watches, watches, watches. They don't do spark plugs because it's the buzz. They don't go to Dubai and buy cheap material. They don't do women's lingerie from Turkey. They don't do sunglasses. Watches. Anything that you need on a watch, Khatri Brothers. From a Rolex to a simple Swatch battery, Khatri Brothers. That's all they do is watches. Muhammad Musa, wholesaler. That's all he does. If it's for retail outlets, that's all they do. But what we do everything. Wigs, ties, shirts, batteries, nail cutters, deodorants, sprays, cheap jewelry. I told Kenny Mutuswa years ago, where is he? I told him years ago, I said, Kenny, you are a qualified electrician. I said, Kenny, and if he'd listened to me back then, there's no telling where he had been today. I said, Kenny, you are such a meticulous electrician. I said, my boy, start cables. Start a business and call it Ken Cables. And start by selling small little, cables, plug-in extensions. I said, and you go to Dubai or China and start bringing in little cables. Or you could be Kenny the Cable Man or something. Not Larry, Kenny the Cable Man. And start bringing in cables. And people get to know you. I said, eventually you bring in cables this size. Don't look at your watch, Robert. Cables this size. Because you're going to be known for cables. Because what are you going to be known for? What are you known for? And so when you are consistent with it, just stay with it, 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 stay with it. Tell somebody consistent. Stay with it, stay with it, stay with it. It gathers momentum. Stay with it. The reason we do for thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory is not because it's a nice beat. It's because we want people to understand it's kingdom, dominion. Every time, every service, you got to do it, do it, do it. Everyone say consistent. Say that again. All right, let's go now to the next one, guys, and let's start building momentum. We talked about for a few minutes what we must develop a culture and not be event-driven. Let's go now to masterful talent opens doors. At some point, when you start crossing over into the right people doing the right things, there's a point where you move away from doing standard church. Standard church versus mega church is so different. Because what we do in standard church, we get people to volunteer. And a volunteer base is very important. But it's very dangerous to have volunteers working in the core administration and executive direction of the ministry. Because if they get a very good contract within the confines of their business, yours goes second, third, or even fourth, and theirs becomes priority. And there's nothing wrong with them doing that, because that's what they do. But at some point, you have to move away from that kind of mentality where you have to start headhunting the right kinds of people that can harness and strengthen your ministry. Uh, if you're driving on a road and suddenly you come to a sign that says 7T, that simply means that the next portion of the road or the bridge that's there cannot hold a weight that exceeds 7 tons. And so once or twice, guys can get away with it, putting a container across that bridge. But when the bridge collapses, it's not the bridge's fault. It's the person that can't read that says 7 tons. And so we have to begin to identify the kinds of people within our leadership structures that have those kinds of signs on their lives. They're just 7-ton people. It's not their fault. They can't manage on a level of international competence because they've not been trained. And it takes a long time maybe to train. And you have to have training, of course, within your local ministry. But I want to encourage everybody that when you get to a certain place or you're getting there, you got to start looking and headhunting. What kind of person do we need? So, for example, we're going to have, when we move into the new building, 5-year-olds in Sunday school or Power Church, whatever we're going to call it then. It's going to be almost 4,000 kids. 4,000 children. So right now we're headhunting. We're looking for a child psychologist that has a PhD, and I think we've located several possibilities. But we want the Acts 6 qualification. They must be full of wisdom, full of the Holy Spirit, full of faith. Because we've got the future of Africa in the hands of somebody. Now, I'm not saying anything about our Sunday school leaders that are there now. I'm not even implying that they got a 7-ton target on their chest. But what I'm saying is that there's some people that it's not their fault that they can't handle heavy traffic. They just can't handle heavy traffic. So you have to start targeting now the right stuff, because I'm telling you what, if you've got rolling down the road 4,000 kids coming, and that container with 4,000 kids gets to your Sunday school leader that's got 7 tons, that bridge is going down with your kids. The same is true of the youth program. We know that 10, 12 years from now, there'll be 4,000 or 5,000 just kids coming through the system. There'll be 4,000 or 5,000 young kids. There will be teenagers. So we need a youth leader that's a strategist that's thinking that way. So we can't wait for them to get there, that 4,000 youth load, and you got somebody that's got a 5T because their bridge can't handle that load. So, and that will kill your momentum. Because you got these young couples that are power couples, entrepreneurs, working that mathematics that Dr. Mensa Audible put up there, and they thinking, I can be a millionaire in 10, 12 years. But they don't want to come to a Sunday school program or a children's kids program that's not together. And so they'll leave what you've taken so long to build and go to a place where they have unlimited load. Are we together so far? All right, because that'll kill your momentum. That's true of the music department. Because a lot of times we have youngsters and guys that can really play, they play by ear, but there comes a point when you might want to have a cantata. And you might want to do, for example, Handel's Messiah and get a full orchestra in there. You can't play by ear with that. You're going to need guys that can read charts, transpose charts, and so on and so forth. So it's all an ongoing process. So you have to look down the road in your plan and start headhunting. Luther Blackwell told me something years ago. I tell you, I went to mega church, Luther Blackwell Church in Cleveland. I was overwhelmed at the standard of music there. I was like blown away. And I said, Bishop, where'd you get these guys? I mean, they were like incredible. And he said, I knew what I wanted in the music department, and I couldn't find anything in Cleveland and in our group that could carry what I wanted to do. He said, so I would sit at these jazz clubs, and I saw some guys playing in the jazz clubs, and I go listen to them. He said, and then I go tell them, I'm Bishop Luther Blackwell. You need to be in church tomorrow. You need to give your heart to the Lord. He said, I go there every Friday and talk to them and talk to them and talk to them. He said, and then a couple of them came and gave their heart to the Lord, and I put them through discipleship and said, you're not going to play in our church until you're ready to play. And I'm telling you, their music program was like off the charts. It was a 7-year process. Gary Oliver was holding his head one year when I was there. If Gary Oliver's holding his head, you know that these guys are good. So the point is here, I'm not saying go sit in a club now and look for somebody. I need a temple dancer, so I'm going to a club to go look for a temple dancer. But I think you get the point. I think you get the point. For your finance department, children's department, music department, and all the others. Because down the road, the momentum that you're gathering can be destroyed by a 5-ton person. And again, it's not their fault. One had 1 talent, one had 2 talents, one had 5 talents, according to their several ability. The 1 talent guy, it wasn't his fault. It wasn't his fault. What was his fault is what he did with it. And so what we have to do is identify the 5 talent people, the type of 5 talent person you want, and start headhunting so that you don't lose momentum. Momentum is gathered, and let's deal with a subjective piece, is that once we start developing an atmosphere for the heavens being opened, that must be maintained. It must be maintained. We want power praise because that's what the scripture requires. The scripture says, clap your hands, Caucasian people. Psalm 47 verse 1. Oh, clap your hands, people from Tanzania. It doesn't say that. It says, clap your hands, all ye people. Quiet people, phlegmatic people, sanguine people, choleric people, people who don't know they have a temperament. Everyone has to clap their hands. And then he says, and shout unto God. Everybody has to shout. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving, his courts with praise. We come before his presence with singing. Everybody has to sing. Now we have guys that sing there that are more skilled than we are. I can't sing. The only reason I get away with it because I'm the bishop. But everybody has to sing. That's a scriptural requirement. That's how we come before the Lord with singing. The Bible tells in Psalm 149 that high praise binds devils. It breaks chains of demonic forces. And so we encourage power singing. Now if you come from a church that has a liturgical process that maybe is a little more quiet, power to the people. But we're African. We're Pentecostal African. That's a dangerous combination. And so we have to have that expression. We Pentecostal African people with a touch of David's dance, you know we're going to do some stuff. So that's what we want in our culture. And it's something that you have to keep on pounding. We're not getting all silent on us. That's what it took to get us here. That's what it's going to take to keep us here. Power prayer. It began in the book of Acts with prayer. The entire book of Acts, every single chapter has the word mentioned prayer except 2, where prayer is going on, but the word pray is not mentioned. But every chapter in the book of Acts, the word pray is mentioned. Power prayer. Got to have it. Got to have it. Start with a handful of people. Start training them in intercessory prayer. It eventually grows. Eventually grows. It eventually grows. When we first went to Nigeria and we saw some of the culture there, I wasn't too despondent that our prayer movement was small here because we knew that it would grow to become what it is today. But we're not done with it. It's still going to keep on growing. That in the future we'll gather on a regular basis as many as 10,000 people. We're doing almost 2,000 a day if you factor in all the prayer meetings we have. So we're not far from that. But it starts with a handful of people. Bishop, Katija, Sister Potts, Sister Florence Cook, Lavinia Mushamba, Arthur Levendale, John Green. Handful of us. And it's been growing ever since. That's what we're going to have in our ministry. And those things pick up momentum. Power preaching. It doesn't mean volume. It means power word. Where a seed is going forth and that seed is breaking into the kind of force and power. And part and parcel of that power preaching, you have to visit significantly the fundamental doctrines and teachings. But I encourage every sermon to put Jesus in it. Put Jesus in your message. Don't become seeker sensitive, Put Jesus in your message. Are you listening to me? Because the minute we start conditioning you out there, we're in trouble. When people walk through the door, they have to comply to what's happening in here, because they're going to need God at some point. And there's got to be the power that you see in Samaria, the power that you see when Paul is preaching in Macedonia, the power in Philippi, the power in the root of Ephesus. We have to have that. We're not moving from that point. It's going to gather momentum, and it's going to bring a revival. At least somebody can say amen. And there's many other things that we've included there. Let's go to the next one that gathers momentum. Okay? You have to keep on pushing an atmosphere of unified expectancy. An atmosphere of unified expectancy. Now, the general culture should be that. But it's not possible to keep on maintaining that. So for prayer meetings then, we have prayer themes or prayer models. And so Zeph Chakawa and Zeph Shamba, who is our intercessory prayer ministry leader, they work with prayer themes. So there's the Lord's Prayer model, or the Psalm 23 model, or the Psalm 91 model, etc., or the Ephesians model. So we use these different models and different themes and different features so that we can keep people inspired. The same is true when you're dealing with church. It's good to have an event. So last year, Apostle Matthew was shouting 10 months, 10 months, 10 months, 10 months. I see something in 10 months. And so Dreen ran to me and said the 10th month is the month of May. So from last year, we planned the month of May to be breakthrough month. And we started getting corporate excitement. And by the time May came, the church was biting holes in the ceiling. And by that point, the level of expectancy was so high. And we designed most of our preaching around that, organized revival services around that. And there were significant, huge, massive breakthroughs, including one individual getting a $1.2 billion breakthrough. $1.2 billion breakthrough. Because corporate expectancy is much better than an individual expecting something to receive. Corporate expectancy develops huge momentum. Huge momentum. And once that ball starts rolling, it then becomes part of the culture. People just come to expect something's going to happen. What's happening today? What's happening today? And when you build that corporate expectancy, it starts from the prayer. It goes all the way to praise and worship. Even if we're doing strange music, you can just feel that atmosphere booming there. I'm coming to the music side now. Momentum is gathered when there's an atmosphere of prosperity and financial blessing. But the thing is that you don't do it with hype. It has to be corporate understanding that when I sow my seed, I am going to prosper. We got this young lady working at the house there. She drives me up the wall, really. Her name is Pamela. And I go there and she's like, she always looks like anemic. I'm sick. I slept on the head the other day. I said, you're so silly. I said, how long have you been with us? 7 years. I want to choke her right there in the key. I said, but you've known our family for how many years? I've known you for 14 years, Bishop. I said, so 14 years ago, where were we? Oh, you were staying in Mount Pleasant. Mount Pleasant. So she's seen our journey. I said, where do you go to church? She's going to a church near our house, sitting under a tree. She's in the house of the bishop. And she's going to a church under a tree. I said, but you've seen our testimony. You've seen how God has taken us from a Mazda to what we're driving. You've seen how God has increased our travel. You've seen how God has enlarged our territory. You've seen how God has increased because you come through the office and you get your little car weekend check or top up. You've seen that. And you've seen that the staff has grown, but you haven't grown. You haven't prospered. I said, you need to come to an environment where there's prosperity. I will come one day, Bishop. So I'm building an allowance in for every Sunday because it could be economics. I don't think so. I just think it's the willingness of the heart. And so we're going to pay for her to come every Sunday so she can be in an environment of prosperity. Because when she sees people standing up here, and incidentally, when you see people standing up here and saying they're giving $1,000, a lot of these folks didn't do that. They're just disobedient. We had people putting in $1 here for $1,000 blessing. I'm just saying. So if you're sitting there and counting and thinking, yo, new life, But when you create an environment of financial prosperity, you begin to attract the business persons. You begin to attract people that want to go to the next place. And when you do that, then you create a little something for business people so that they can grow and continue to develop. But it gathers momentum because it develops an aspirant idea that this environment is an environment of prosperity, because God takes pleasure in the prosperity of his servant. Wealth and riches shall be in my house, both personal, physical, and corporate. It shall be there. And it becomes an entire environment, and it builds momentum. It builds momentum. Everyone say breakthrough. Let's go to the next one. Well, let me deal with this. The next one here is, once we begin to develop an environment of prosperity and financial blessing, let me just plug a little idea here. It's difficult to come after Dr. Audible and top what he talked about in that formula of saving money and going 31 years and so on. But what Chicha and I have done, and we stumbled on a certain place by mistake. It's like Jacob in 28 of Genesis. Sometimes when you have nobody to teach you like you had today, we had nobody to teach us. If I had this teaching, this one, today, if I had this in 1982, 33 years ago when we got married, I wouldn't be telling the story today. But Chicha and I stumbled on a principle by total mistake years ago, and that was we put away 15% of our revenue. We do it for our lives. Of every dollar, 15% goes away. It's saved. We do that with everything we do. 15% saving. We do it with our church. We've been doing it for years. And even after the fact that we lost all our money, as you did in 2009, and all of our savings were corroded, we picked up from there, from 2009. And I'm telling you, if we never take an offering for 1 year, we can keep the doors open in this church with everything we do. With an annual budget of over $2 million, just from 15%. 15%. Don't clap, do it. Do it. Do it. It's easy. It becomes part of your culture. Every church needs to be financially deep. 15% is not unreasonable. Let's put it away. Put it away. And I'm telling you, in time, all kinds of things happen. Do it for your family. Do it for your life. Everyone say momentum. Momentum. Let's deal with momentum stoppers. Let's deal with momentum stoppers. The first thing that stops momentum is the leader himself or herself. That's a disengaged leader. I love Michael Kwankwo, Bishop Michael Kwankwo from Nigeria. Bishop Mike's pushing now to his late 60s. And I'm telling you, when we're in conference with him, wherever we are, Bishop Mike is taking notes and he's learning. And he's ever learning. And you go to his church, Bishop Mike's cathedral is much larger than this building. 5 choirs in that church of over 100 voices each. It's an amazing church. It's an amazing, amazing, amazing church. It's so cutting edge. If you were blindfolded and you just walked into Bishop Michael Kwankwo's church in Lagos, Nigeria, and you didn't know where you were and the blindfold was taken off, you'd never believe you were in Nigeria. Bishop Mike bought that piece of property from a word from the Lord to buy a piece of property. That piece of property was under 20 foot of water. That's over 2.5 meters of water with reeds. And people laughed at him and thought he was crazy. And after he bought that land, began to pray on the land. And the land began to self-drain. Just self-drain. And then he put up a shed that's like from here to other side the exit, it'll seat, that shed, wooden shack, will seat close onto 7,500 people, normal size. And I've been there when it's over 10,000 people, just piled on each other. Then he started building the cathedral. And I'm telling you, it's amazing, amazing. And every time I go to Bishop Mike's and I see stuff there, he's so involved in every process of what's happening in that ministry. He learns something along the way of some of the things we were doing with CAA and what we did with our own ministry and what Dr. Ott was doing with his ministry, which was host a forum for business people. And so we started 3 years ago a forum called The Big Idea. And he's brought the very best in Nigeria to come and address his congregation on the big idea. And then he's got all kinds of other incentivized programs, and he's right in there. The momentum in that church is scary because momentum is as great as anointing. So leaders never disengage. Some recommendations are to stay engaged. Every Sunday, your church leaders are coming to church anyway. Let them come 30 minutes early. Spend some time with them. Teach them a life principle. Give them a little bit of an update, a review, preview of the ministry. It keeps people in touch because they come into church anyway. And so you stay engaged. Let them give you feedback. Instead of telling people what to do as a leader, bring them into the conversation as to what we can do. Because you're going to make the final decision anyway. Because if you get people to be involved in what we can do, it adds to the momentum. Sisters and brothers, I am taller than Chichi. We don't see eye to eye. I'm taller than she is. But even though I'm taller than Chichi, I still look up to her. And that works with every area of our ministry. Every leader, I encourage you to develop an internal and also have an external, internal that's within your local office, strategic team. And then external, people that are looking from outside, looking in, that can come and talk to you. So I do that every 3 months. I bring in guys from outside, Barry, and then others from different parts. Jeff from Tlanga, they'll come and speak into idea that we have, and that strategy from a lay person's view. Also in that group, we bring in a nurse, not somebody that's in business, like a nurse, or somebody that's working in a supermarket, so that we can have their perspective of the church. It's part of the getting the leader engaged in what's really happening, because it's very easy for a person like myself who travels a lot to become disengaged, and we lose momentum because of the leader. A leader can cause a church to lose momentum, and people can see it long before you ever do, because you get that classy look. You suddenly look like Liberace in the wrong place. Like every leader, you must engage. Your church is a reflection of you. Your kids are a reflection of you. Your motor vehicle is a reflection of you. Your desk is a reflection of you. Your body is a reflection of you. So don't be in denial. Don't disengage. Become involved in your body. Become involved in your children. Become involved in your ministry, the lives of your ministry. Now I know by nature I'm a people person. I like to travel on my own. I'm a people person. I just love, I'm a huggy. Dr. Otterbull is a different animal. He's a different style. But I'm huggy, colors, and I'll go into a green room or I'll go into a leader's place and shake everybody's hand. How you doing? Where do you? I like doing that. That's just me. That's my temperament style. But even if you don't have that temperament style, you got to stay engaged with people. Spend a few minutes, listen to what they're saying. I was horrified, sisters and brothers, in the last few months when I found out that there were business people in our church that had been there for 16 years, 10 years, 12 years that I've never ever met. So we created a little something where Philip Pike and George Chikulu and Dream created a membership area where people can come through and shake our hand and greet us and take a selfie and yada, yada, yada. And I'm now beginning to meet a lot more people, becoming more engaged, meeting business people who are coming to the table. But a leader that becomes disengaged is dangerous. If you become disengaged in worship and praise and stuff like that, it's very dangerous. If you become disengaged in prayer meetings and prayer processes, very dangerous. You can't disengage because you're going to be responsible for losing momentum. Okay. And then secondly, as a leader, you have to identify the leaders in your church. And once you have them, you've got to help them push momentum. There are 4 types of people you have to watch that destroy momentum in the church. And it can also be in your life. Number 1, toxic leaders. Never as a person become toxic. Somebody's going to hurt you and do you in as a leader. You can destroy the momentum of your church. And then if you have toxic people in your group, don't tolerate a toxic leader on your team. If you take 3 sets of apples, everyone say 3 sets of apples. Say that again. You take 3 sets of apples, okay? You have great, awesome, beautiful Cape apples. And then you have another set of great apples, but you take one that's really rotten and you put it in the middle of the good apples. And then you have a whole lot of rotten apples. And you take a good apple and you put it in the middle of the good apples. Let me ask you this question. What will happen to the good apples with a rotten apple? They all get rotten. What happens to the rotten apples with the good apple? The good apple gets rotten. You never get a good apple making rotten apples good. So Randy Clark told us when you're identifying leaders to serve, one of the things you should be looking for is not just their talent. You want to look at who do they go to lunch with on Sundays. Because if they're going to lunch with people that are talking about you, they also talking about you. You don't want somebody that's talking about you there in a bad way. Here's another one. But before you promote somebody, just go around their kids without them being there. If the children come to you and say, "Oh, Bishop, Bishop," you know the parents are talking good about you at home. But if the kids are looking at you like this, you know the parents are not talking about you good at home. Trust me, I know. I've seen it. Bishop Wellington was telling the story that one day this child was looking at the bishop and saying, and the bishop said to the child, "What's wrong? Why are you looking at me like this?" He says, "Bishop, my mommy says you have 2 faces. I'm trying to find the other one." Number 2, watch for cynical leaders. Because you can have people that are not toxic, but they're cynical. I felt that spirit rise up here on Wednesday night when Matthew Ashamaloa started preaching. That's why I just kept on looking forward. Because when he was pounding with prophetic prosperity declarations in his preaching, I just felt the cynical spirit rise. It's not toxic, it's cynical. It's like, I can't believe I came for the spirit. I've been in ministry for 40 years. I can pick up stuff. And I can even tell you where it's coming from. Just that cynical, you feel it, cynical. You can't and shouldn't have cynical people around you. Now, what happens is, you will say to your church, tomorrow this time, there's a 24-hour breakthrough. And your greatest advisor, cynical, gets up and says, "I don't think it's going to happen unless the Lord opens the windows of heaven." So what are you going to do with somebody like that just crossed you publicly? It's cynical. Get rid of the cynical leaders. Just move them on. Leaders with unbelief. Watch for leaders that have unbelief. And belief is based on the word. It's based on experience. It's based on successes. So it's advisable that when you bring leaders on that have successes. What kind of successes? Not a successor. Success in working in a job at Barclays Bank. Success in being a good son-in-law. Success in serving in some department. How did you do in the toilet department serving there? Success don't invite somebody around the table that has no successes. You killed a bear, you killed a lion, you killed a giant. Those things are important. Because if you bring somebody that doesn't have successes in their life, contiguous forms of victories, when you make a statement, we need $25 million, they'll be sitting there with unbelief. Because they've never had success in saving 25. And they'll mess up your momentum. Now, all of what I'm saying is there's an exception, and I understand that. Ivy Hillard was telling the Jabula conference in the United States, when he was preaching, he said he was building a new building, and a ex-drug dealer kind of guy got saved. And the Lord told him, this man is going to be your contractor. He'll build your new church. And Ivy Hillard said, Bishop Hillard said, he said to the Lord, how can you do me that way? What have I ever done to you that you're going to do me that way and give me somebody that has no building experience, hasn't been trained for it, and you're going to do me that way? He said, but Lord, at your word, I'll do it. He said, and when they were building their new building, they had 7 days left before they were going into the building, and the roofing wasn't in. And they needed to put up, the roofing had to go in so that they could put in the air conditioning system because it's in the middle of July. And so this guy was leading the project, and he said he was on the road and had the whole program, people coming from around the world for the dedication of that building. And he goes on to say that 8 days before that, he gets a call from this brother and says, I just fired the roofing guy. So how can you fire the roofing guy? We have 8 days to go. He said, well, he was saying to all the staff, we'll never get this done in 8 days. He said, and he was speaking a negative word and a word of unbelief. I fired him. And so then Bishop Hilliard said, he put the word out that we need to get this roof done. And roofing companies came from all over Houston. He said instead of these guys working from 8 to 5, he said they had 3 shifts going for less the money in a space of time. And they got that thing done. It would have taken these guys with unbelief a month to do it. But this guy who had belief and said we'll have it, brought in teams that came from everywhere and did the job in 7 days. And they still had their dedication. Because people on your leadership with unbelief will destroy momentum. You as a person with unbelief will destroy momentum. Don't let 10 spies go in there and come back and convince people that we can't take what God has promised us. Because when you go 40 years and people die in the wilderness, fast forward 40 years, Rahab says, 40 years ago we heard of what God had done to the Egyptians through you, and how you crossed over the Red Sea. And she said, our knees, our madolos were breaking, and we were melting like wax. And she said, we were astonished when we saw you guys walk away. But 40 years ago, we were convinced that God had given you the city. 10 guys showed unbelief and messed up a destiny, including that of Miriam, Aaron, and Moses. We were so thrilled that we were able to come into your home and come into your life through our program. I know you were blessed and edified. It gives us a great joy and through preparing these messages for you so that you can be a part of them. We also want to just say that this message that you just watched is available on CD and DVD, and the number on your screen makes it easy for you to access the resource. But not only that, there are other resources that are related to this particular subject. We want to thank you for your support. Thank you for partnering with us. There are so many people that we assist and help. And so also the number on your screen will give you an idea as to how you can get a hold of us to partner with us. All partnership programs are welcome and very much needed for the things we do to stay on television, but also to help the people that we work with in different parts of the world. Cheech and I love you very, very much, and we thank you for your support. And please, watch us next week because we're coming back to you with a fresh message and a fresh revelation. God bless you.